Dawn with 7 Acres Homestead here. Thank you for joining us for class number 2 in our series called Canning 101. Today we're going to be discussing all of the tools and different things that you're going to need to have in place before you start home canning your own food. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me for class number 2 in Home Canning 101. Today we are going to be talking about all the different tools that you guys are going to need in order to start home canning your own food. Now, I want to let you know that I will be putting links in the description box to my Amazon store for all of the products we're showing here today. Now, they are affiliate links. I make a few pennies if you happen to click on one and buy it, but if you don't, that's okay too. Another thing that I'm going to tell you is you don't always have to buy all this brand new. Sometimes you can find this stuff at yard sales. You can find it at estate sales. Sometimes you have an aunt that's been canning and she just can't do it anymore and she wants to get rid of her stuff. You just never know. So I do encourage you, if you can buy some of this stuff used, as long as it's in good condition, that's a big deal, then definitely spend some time looking at yard sales and thrift stores and things like that. I one time found 2 food dehydrators brand new in the box for $5 a piece at the Goodwill. Had never been used. So definitely, if you can find them that way, do it. If not, check out the links in my description box because I do try to go in there and shop for you guys and find the best deals on the things that I'm trying to help you guys find. So other than your stovetop, these are really the most expensive things that you're going to have in order to can. If you were going to water bath can, you need a water bath canner, which I'm going to show a picture of right now. Now, I, instead of a water bath canner, use a 20-quart stock pot. I like these because they're taller than the regular water bath canners, and I can also use them for many other things, and I have limited space, so I just choose to use this instead, and it's a little bit sturdier, to be honest. This is my All-American canner. This is a 25-quart All-American canner. There are multiple sizes of this. This one will hold up to 9 quart jars, and it will hold up to 22 pint jars because you can double stack these. And you also can put just a multitude of the smaller, like 4 and 8 ounce jars in here and fit a lot in it at one time. I love my All-American canner. Don't know if you guys can see. Let's see how thick the metal is on this thing. It is safe. It's got 6 of these big, huge screw bolts on the top to hold it down. It has the double gauges. It's got a weight gauge, and then it has the gauge with the pressure and the temperature on it as well. Big, huge, heavy-duty handle. This canner I've had for multiple years, probably canned thousands of jars of food in this thing, and it is just a beast. So if you're going to buy a pressure canner, I recommend the All-American. Guys, I'm telling you, this will be the last canner you will ever have to buy, and it is safe. And that is a big, huge thing when you're looking at canners, is you want one that's safe. I don't trust these little canners that have 1 or 2 little locks on the top. I've just seen too many accidents happen where these lids pop off these things and go through the ceiling or burn someone very badly or even burn their house down. So honestly, I'm not sponsored by All-American canners at all, but I am just a big believer in the quality of these things. Also, they are made in the United States. So one of the other bigger expenses, and I say bigger expenses because let me clarify that. This is a case of ball canning jars. These are pint-sized jars. I believe this case cost me about $15 or $16 at Walmart. You can find them at Walmart. You can find them at your local feed stores a lot of times. A lot of times the hardware stores have them. Sometimes the grocery stores have them. I will tell you, the cheapest price I have found on canning jars is at Walmart. I know, guys, they're the evil empire, and we hate to spend any more of our money there than we have to, but it is the cheapest place to find canning jars, and they're usually pretty abundant. You can almost any time of year find canning jars over there, unless something weird's going on, like during the pandemic. But when I say this is one of your big expenses, it's because you are going to be buying lots of these. You are going to be buying cases and cases and cases. It's not unusual to go out and spend several $100s on canning jars when you've got a whole lot of canning projects going on. I will tell you that Amazon's going to kill me for this, but I don't recommend usually buying your canning jars on Amazon, because a lot of times you're getting these off brands that are coming from China, and they're not the highest quality, A, and B, they're going to cost you 2, 3, 4 times as much as if you went to the feed store or the hardware store or Walmart to buy your canning jars. If you can find these at yard sales and they're in good shape, do it. Sometimes you can find them at yard sales. Sometimes you can find them at estate sales. Estate sales are a really good place to find these. So many people are canning now, though. If you don't get there first thing and catch them before somebody else does, they're going to be gone. But even if they don't have lids or rings, go ahead and get them, because you're usually going to get a really good deal, and you can always buy rings and lids later. Now, I always have a surplus of rings, because when I can stuff and I put it up, I take the rings off of that, so I usually have more rings than I need. Worst case scenario, you may have to buy some lids. Okay, guys, so I showed you some of the bigger ticket items that you're going to have in order to start home canning. I'm going to show you some of the smaller tools now that are pretty much a must-have, and I'm going to explain to you what each of these tools does and the different things that you could possibly use them for. So if you buy an all-American canner or you buy a home canner, a lot of times they will come with one of these. If they do not, you want to make sure that you have one of these for each one of your canners, because sometimes you may be using both canners or 2 canners or multiple canners at the same time if you start harvesting and canning a lot of stuff. So these are cushion plates, and they have a little ridge along the inside, if you can see this, and you set this down in the bottom of your canner. And these little holes will allow the water to flow in and out. And what this does is this cushions the bottom of your canner against your jars. So your jars will sit on top of this. And what that does is when you've got that rolling, boiling water going, and those jars are wanting to hop up and down in that canner, this is going to keep them from hitting the bottom of the canner too hard and breaking inside your canner. Gotta tell you, a must-have. You absolutely positively need these. Again, a lot of times, I know when you get your All-American canner, it's going to have at least one of these in the package, so it's not something you usually need to buy separately. You might check your description box when you purchase it just to make sure that it has it in there, because you definitely need to have one of these. Also, if you have a large All-American canner like I do, where you can double stack your jars, you're going to need 2 of these, because you're going to put this in the bottom. You're going to put your first stack of jars on top. Then, with your jars here, you're going to come back and put the second one on top of those jars and stack your second stack of jars on top. So that keeps those from rattling on top of each other as well, and that cuts down on breakage. I will tell you that it is heartbreaking to open up that canner after all of that work and all of the tedious everything that you do in order to get it there, and you've got broken jars of food floating around in your canning apparatus. It sucks. You don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you guys the best way to go to keep from having that happen. Okay, so one of the other tools that is a must-have, and these are not super expensive. You can purchase them separately, or you can purchase them in a kit. And I will put a link to the kits that have these in the description box down below. And the kit usually comes with several items. It will come with this funnel, and it will come with some of these other items that I'm getting ready to show you now. Okay, so what are the other things that's going to come in that box of tools is this jar lifter. And what this does is this helps you safely take the jars and put them in the canner and pull them back out of the canner when they're like super duper hot. So how this works is you grab a hold of this top part with your hands here, and it's just like a set of tongs. And you're going to grab the top of your jar, just like this, and just put a little bit of pressure on these top pieces here, and it's going to allow you to lift and drop that jar down into that hot liquid without, fear of burning your hands, burning your fingers, burning your arms, whatever. So this is a must-have tool. You definitely need to have one of these. Another thing that will usually come in that kit that I'm putting a link to are these tongs. And they come in handy for several things. One of the things I use this for is when I'm removing my weight off of the top of my canner. These little things fit perfectly around that weight, so I will usually grab my weight with this and pull it off. But these can also be used to put pieces of meat into your jar or whatever. So these things really come in handy. Do you have to have these particular ones? No, there's other tongs that you can use. But this does happen to come in the kit that I'm going to put a link to down there. And so it's helpful just to have everything all together. Another thing that will probably come in the kit, and I don't really have one right here, but many of the kits have a tool that is a measuring tool. It's a little plastic doodad, and I just don't usually use it because I've done so much I can eyeball it. So mine has been lost somewhere over the years. But it helps you measure your headspace. So it will show you exactly where you need to be up to have 1 inch, ½ inch, 3/4 inch, 1/4 inch, whatever headspace you need. Can you use a ruler? Yeah, you can definitely use a ruler. But a lot of times these kits will come with one of those. Another thing that these kits will come with is a magnet tool. And it's just, again, I don't use it. Long time ago, used to, on our canning lids here, they would tell you to take your canning lids and boil them to sanitize them. So now they don't recommend you doing that anymore because what they found was it starts degrading this rubber seal around the inside, and that seal is your lifeline. That seal right there is what is going to allow your jar to have a vacuum in it that keeps anything and everything out of your food so that it can stay safe. So they do not recommend that you boil or simmer these anymore. That magnet tool was so that while this was sitting in a thing of hot water, you could stick the magnet down in and pull these lids out and put them on the jar. We don't do that anymore. We just pick it up with our hand and put it on the top of the jar. We're done. But a lot of these kits will still come with that tool just in case it's something that you still need to use for whatever. So that particular kit is one of the things that I'm going to recommend that you guys get. Again, you can buy all these products separately, but you're probably going to pay more for them if you do that. Also, again, if you can find them at a yard sale or something, I say go for it, do it. You may save a couple dollars. They're not super expensive to begin with. I think the last kit that I bought cost me like $12, $15. So that whole kit would be included in that. Now, one of the other items that I always recommend having is this handy little tool here. And this particular tool saves you so much money. Now, we're going to talk about lids in conjunction with this tool. So, these are boxes of canning lids. I bought these off of Amazon, and again, I will put the link in there so that you guys have that. I'll put a link for the small lids and a link for the wide mouth lids. And this is what your lid looks like. It's the flat piece with the rubber seal that seals your jars. Now, this little tool I'm talking about, this lid sits right on your jar. When you can this, you're going to have the ring wrapped around the top of it. Okay? When you're through canning and your jars have cooled and they have sat for 24 hours, you're going to take that ring off before you store these. So just so you know, you're going to end up with Ziploc bags full of rings, and there's not very many in this bag, but I have bags and bags and bags of these. And you're just going to store those until you need them again to reuse the jar. So what this tool does is it sits right on the top of your canning jar lid, just like this. And then this little piece right here slides underneath the jar, and you just pop this off. And you'll know if you have a good seal when you open that jar, because you're going to hear the vacuum suction happening when you pop this lid off. Good thing about that is, A, you know that your jar had a good seal on it. B, when you use this tool, you're not going to tear up this lid. This is a lid that's already been used once, and as you can see, it is perfect. It is straight, it is flat, it doesn't have any dents in it, doesn't have any dings in it, and there's not been any damage done to the rubber seal. Now, there will be people who tell you, oh, do not use your lids, do not reuse them. Yes, you can reuse them. I do it all the time, but it is only because of this little tool. Before this tool, we used to have to take a knife or a fork and stick it in there and pry the lid off. And when we did that, we would get little kinks in the edges. We would damage the rubber seal with the tip of the knife or the fork. Or worse yet, we would bend the lid, and then it wouldn't be any good to create a seal. In those days, you almost always had to replace your lids every single time you can. I reuse mine over and over and over again. I just make sure, again, no dings, no scratches on the edge, no bent lids, and no rubber seal damage. And as long as all of that is in place, you can reuse these. I will also put a link to this in my description box. Now, another thing that I use a whole lot of are these little sieves. And I call it a sieve, you might call it a sifter. And I would put a link to this on the Amazon cart, but to be honest with you, I get these at Dollar Tree. I go to the kitchen section, they're hanging on the wall where all of the spatulas and stuff are, and these things cost me $1.25 at Dollar Tree. So when I start running low on these, I just go grab a handful. I grab 4, 5, 6 of them and just throw them in the drawer with all of my canning stuff. I just throw it in there with my funnel and all that stuff. So these come in handy for a multitude of things, but one of the things I especially like these for is when I'm making stock or broth. This thing fits right down on top of this funnel, and then I just put my funnel right down in the jar, and I can pour my liquid directly into this. It goes straight into the jar. There's not extra dishes to get dirty trying to strain all the stuff out of your liquid, and that is just, it makes an amazing difference when you're trying to get a whole bunch of jars filled with liquid, and you don't want to spend an extra step trying to sift all of that out before you pour it in your jars. So another one of the things that I use a whole lot of are these 4-cup measuring cups. Now again, I get these at Dollar Tree, and I will usually, when I need some, go and buy 4 or 5 of them. You know, if you buy 4 of them, it costs you $5. So, you know, that's not a lot to invest. And I use these for scooping liquid to, like when I'm doing broth, I'll scoop the liquid out to pour in my jars. It has this nice little funnel edge here where it just pours a really precise amount of whatever you're trying to do. It says it's a 4-cup, which the 4-cup comes up to here. If you got it all the way to the very top, it's about 5 cups. And these come in so handy when you're canning. I use these almost every single time I can. They work as great little bowls if you're chopping up little different pieces of things and you want to just throw it all together. These are dishwasher safe, so I just throw all my stuff in the dishwasher at the end of the day, and it's just easy cleanup for me. So this is another thing, again, $1.25 at the Dollar Tree. You can find them elsewhere. Feel free to. Hopefully you can find some at yard sales or whatever, but as cheap as these are, you know, $1.25. Okay, so another thing that you are going to need is white vinegar. And I buy this a gallon at a time. This I get at Walmart, not super duper expensive. I really quite honestly cannot remember how much I paid for this. I want to say $3, $4, $5 for a gallon of it. And this is used for multiple things. When you are pickling things, you're going to use a liquid vinegar base to pickle things. okay? But even if you never pickle a single thing, there's several things that this is good for. One of them is when you are canning and you get all your stuff in your jar and you're ready to put your lids on, you're going to take a paper towel, you're going to get some of that white vinegar on it, and you're going to wipe and clean the rim of this jar. And what that's going to do is that is going to cause this rubber piece here to have a really good seal on there. Now, if you have anything greasy, or you have a piece of salt or pepper, or you have some little piece of food on the edge of this jar, you're not going to get a good seal, and that makes you start all over again on processing the jars, which nobody wants because this is some work to begin with, so you don't want to add to that work. So always, always, always clean the lids of your jars with your vinegar before you put your lids on there. Now, another thing that this is great for, especially if you're canning something that has any kind of oil or grease in it, because the jars do siphon off a little bit, sometimes you'll end up with some of that oil in your water, in your canner, especially if you're doing pressure canning, which usually if you have any kind of fat in there, you're probably going to be pressure canning it. One thing that I do is I pour about a quarter cup of the vinegar in my water in the canner. And the reason I do that is it cuts through that grease. And are you going to have to dump out that water if it gets grease in it and wash your canner out and all of that? Yes, you are. However, this makes that a lot easier. It also doesn't leave as much greasy residue on your jars. Because if you're canning glass jars and they get any kind of residue on them, once your jars are ready to be stored, you have to clean all that off. Speaking of, when I take my jars out, if they do have any residue on them and it is time to put those away in the pantry, I don't want to put them away in the pantry like that. I want to make sure that my jars are clean on the outside as well as the inside, because if you don't, it can attract things like rodents and insects, and you don't want that. So another thing that I will do is if I have any residue on the outside of my jars, when I'm ready to put them away, I will take a little tea towel, or you can do a paper towel, but a tea towel tends to work better, and you put some of this white vinegar on there, and you just really clean the outside of your jar well, and it makes it squeaky clean. The bugs don't want it, the rodents don't want it, and you may save yourself a headache down the road. So, vinegar, a must-have. Now, one of the things I'm going to talk about here is not as much about the canning process itself, but it is about preparing the food for canning. You are going to be doing a whole lot of slicing, dicing, chopping, pureeing, processing, you name it. You are going to be cutting things up like crazy, okay? We're not all Edward Scissorhands, and it's a lot of work. So there are multiple things that you can use. If you have a really good food processor that can slice, dice, chop, do all the things you need to do, that is fantastic. I personally do not have one of the big food processors. I may break down one day and get one, but I live in a tiny home. I live in a 600 square foot home, so I don't have a lot of room for big stuff. So that is the reason why right now I have not chose to get one. Now, one of the things that I absolutely love is my mandolin slicer. Okay, guys? Amazon, you get a really good set for about $40. Again, I'll put a link to this one that I bought in there so you guys can see that. I'm usually a bargain shopper, and I will go in and find the best price. Now, this blade here is removable. See if I can do this without chopping off a finger. These blades will pop right out of here. And this one came with a box of multiple blades. So it has this straight blade. It has a wavy blade. This one also has a deal here, and this is the dangerous part, where you can pop out these other little blades. And that way, if you want to julienne slice your vegetables, it will come down through these little slicers that will make it into thin sections, and then it will hit this and chop it the other way. So this one will do quite a bit. The only thing that I really can't do with this one is just dice stuff up. But I'll put a link to this in there. And then again, if you have a favorite chopper, slicer, whatever you use to process vegetables and things with, that will be something that you definitely can use. You don't have to specifically go out and buy this one that I have here. Okay, now I know we already talked about canning jars, but I want to kind of expand on the canning jar situation a little bit. This is a pint canning jar. It holds 16 ounces, which is 2 cups of food or liquid. And this is my go-to size on most food items, okay? My husband Tim and I don't have anyone living here with us anymore. It's just the two of us. So a lot of times if I am putting back vegetables, or I'm putting back soup or stew, or pretty much most of anything, I'm not going to want a jar that's more than 2 cups of food. And the way I look at it is this. If I need more than that, if we have company coming over or whatever, then I can open 2 jars just as easily as I can open 1 jar. So I tend to stick with these 16-ounce jars for most things that I can. Now, that being said, there are multiple jar sizes. You can get all the way up to a gallon size, which most people do not, pressure can with those or water bath can with those. The biggest jars that I use are these. These are a half gallon, and I typically use these for storing dry goods, like sugar and flour and pasta and different things like that. I have a whole shelf of them across the top of half of my kitchen is covered in these jars, and I use them to store dried vegetables, just all kinds of stuff. So this is one of the bigger jars that I personally use, but I don't usually, pressure or water bath can with it. The next size down are these quart jars. They hold 4 cups, which is 32 ounces if you're looking at liquid measurement. And I do can with these sometimes. If I'm doing chili or soups or stews or whatever, and I want a little bit bigger amount of something, I'll go ahead and can with these. I used to can vegetables and things with these, and I just got to realizing that it was just too much in a jar for Tim and I can always open 2 smaller jars. But if you have a good sized family, if you have 4, 5, 6 people in your family, then this size jar may work better for you. Now, then we go down to my pint size jar, like I showed you. And one of the next sizes that I love, this is a 10-ounce canning jar. Now, this particular jar I did get off of Amazon, and again, I'll put the link down there if you guys want to look at these. These are from Verona canning jars, and they've been pretty good. I haven't had any issues with that particular brand. But their sizes are very limited. You can get these 10-ounce jars from them, and then you can get the little 4-ounce jars, which are about, a little less than half this size. And I've used these for a lot of different things. Now, these 10-ounce jars, when I am making cream of chicken and cream of mushroom soup and canning it, I like these because it is about the same amount as a small can of cream of mushroom or cream of chicken soup at the store. So, the reason that's important to me is a lot of recipes that I use that call for a can of cream of mushroom or cream of chicken soup. This will be the same size, and I'm not having to dig something out and spoon out and throw part of it away or whatever. So I like these jars specifically for that purpose, but you can use them for anything. This is an 8-ounce jar, and you can get these in a little bit taller version that is a regular mouth. This is a wide mouth, which means it uses the larger lids. I like these for things like a single serving soup because you can take it out of the cabinet, pop your lid off, put this directly in the microwave, eat out of it without having to get another bowl dirty, and put it back in the sink. So if you're looking at doing some individual serving sizes of soups, stews, chili, whatever, these work really, really well. And so I get some of these wide mouth ones that are this size for that specific purpose. Now, I don't have one right here in front of me because they're all being used right now, but I do have the shorter version of these that are 4-ounce jars, and they typically call these jelly jars because a lot of times people will can jelly in these smaller jars. Sometimes when I do homemade caramel, I will also do them in those 4-ounce jars, or if I do chocolate sauce, I'll do them in the 4-ounce jars because that's more of an individual serving size, and I am all about convenience, and opening that lid, popping that caramel sauce in the microwave for 30 seconds, stirring it up, using it out of the jar, and not getting another dish dirty. Worst thing in the world to me is a bunch of dirty dishes. I hate doing dishes. And so I do anything and everything possible to avoid as many of those as I can. So, guys, I believe I have covered most of the basic tools that you guys are going to need. There may be a few specialty things depending on if you're doing something different than the normal canning stuff. If you're going off the beaten path and doing something different, you may need some kind of specialty item. But for the most part, everything I've shown you here today is absolutely what you're going to need. And so I'm hoping you guys are going to join me for part 3, lesson number 3. And I will see you guys then. And happy canning.